Hello everyone and welcome to another session of AP Human Geography with Mr. Elrod. Today we're going to continue on with our discussion of commercial forms of agriculture. Today we're going to talk about two final forms of commercial agriculture, and then we'll move on to a new topic. Today we're going to be discussing the process of dairying, and we're also going to be looking at large-scale grain agriculture. Now we talk about dairying. Again, dairying, as you might assume, really we're just talking about milk, and we're talking about milk-based products. So clearly, aside from just your regular run-of-the-mill milk that you might buy at the grocery store, you're also looking at other products of milk. So we're talking about cheeses, talking about butters, talking about creams, and those types of things. So again, there's a variety of different products that we can look at when it comes to dairying. Now, one thing that makes dairying a little bit different from some of our other forms of agricultural production is that dairy tends to be much more perishable than a lot of our other products that are going to be created and grown and those types of things. Maybe with the exception of meat, dairy products probably have some of the shortest shelf lives. Now, of course, with the advent of new technologies, whether it's in transportation or in preservatives, dairy does have an extended shelf life now. But again, if you just kind of look in general versus the crops versus dairy products, dairy tends to have a little bit shorter shelf life, and it needs to be refrigerated, so it tends to be a little bit more expensive in that regard to keep. But when we look at dairying, there's one of the things that's important to note is that based upon what type of dairy product we're looking at, you're going to have different production sites, but also different sets of distribution. Typically, when we're talking about milk-based products, we're talking about milk-based products. That was very unprofessional of me, wasn't it? I apologize. Talking about milk-based products, milk and those types of products are going to tend to be processed and gotten much closer to the market. So you're going to tend to have more production facilities for milk than you might have for milk-based products. So when we look at items such as milk-based products, things like cheeses, things like butters and sour cream and those types of things, those tend to not be as perishable, and so you can have production facilities that are a little bit further away. Now you can tell from the picture that I have here to the right, clearly this does not look like our traditional concept of a dairy farm, but that's one of the elements of commercial dairy. It's much smaller than a lot of the other forms of agricultural production. Typically, when we think of scale in commercial agriculture, we think of a much larger scale. Now, commercial dairying is going to be much larger in scale than the traditional methods of dairying, but it's going to be smaller comparatively to the other forms of commercial agriculture, and it's going to be much more capital intensive. The machines that are required in order to not only milk the cows, but then also process the milk, homogenize the milk, pasteurize the milk, and get it ready for shipping are going to be much more expensive than those machines are going to be much more expensive and costly than some of the machines that are required for the production and processing of your crops. An important concept, though, when we talk about dairying is this term called the milk shed. When we look at the milk shed is the area in which milk can be produced and then shipped to market within its shelf life. Now, one of the things that's happened is that over time the milk shed has grown because of improved transportation, and also because of improved you either look at improved transportation technology, but also improved preservative technology when it comes to food. Improved transportation technology through the things like highways, the large transfer trucks that we have, but also things like refrigerated trucking are going to be very important to the shipping of milk. So this has allowed for production facilities of milk to move much further away from the market, and you don't necessarily need as many dairy farms or production facilities. And I guess one of the things I forgot to mention, again with the technology, is the food preservative technology. The way that we are able to homogenize and pasteurize milk to keep it together, to keep it from spoiling, and also some of the additional additives that can be added to the different forms of dairy products to keep them from spoiling. The last type of commercial agriculture we'll refer to is what's called large-scale grain production, and pretty much just like the term says, we're talking about grain production on a very large scale, right? Seems like you could have figured that out probably without me telling you, but that's okay. When we look at large-scale grain production, we're mainly looking at two types of crops that are grown. That's going to be wheat, and that is going to be corn. I know I don't have a picture of corn here. We have a picture of wheat. But corn and wheat in the United States especially in the United States, are grown really for two different purposes. When we look at wheat in the United States, wheat for us is predominantly grown for consumption by humans. Corn is grown for predominantly one of two purposes: either for cattle consumption. We feed a lot of our corn to our animals and we use it for feed, or is used for ethanol production. With the push for clean energies and things like that, more and more corn is being grown for ethanol production, which has actually impacted the cost of beef, because cattle feed has gone up, which has means that either farmers are killing off their cows because cost of production is up, so there's fewer cows, or they're increasing prices because cattle feed has gone up, and so of course they're going to pass that along to the consumer. When we look at Western Europe, however, a lot of wheat is grown predominantly to feed their cattle. So that is what they're going to be using to feed their cattle with. Remember, corn corn not necessarily founded, but corn was first really cultivated in the Americas, and so it makes it kind of a native plant, and that hasn't necessarily made its way over to Europe in great abundance. One of the most important areas of agricultural development, especially in large-scale grain, what made large-scale grain such an important factor was the Industrial Revolution. And what the Industrial Revolution did for us was it allowed us to cultivate more land and do so more efficiently. And when you look in the economic geography section of the class, we'll talk about the fact that we don't necessarily need, and we talked about this in the population section as well, we don't need as many farmers to feed even more people in our country today. So fewer farmers can do more work. You can actually grow more crops on less land because of the genetic work that's been done that allows crops to be grown closer together, don't need as much water, those types of things. And then, of course, with that, you have the machines that were created. Obviously, the combine, which this is a combine right here, combines the three processes of harvesting grain. Obviously, does the work much faster than any individual could. Some other older inventions, things like the seed drill. That was an incredibly important invention during kind of at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Things like a tiller that makes it much easier to break up ground as opposed to using a plow. And of course, there's the engine, and as the internal combustion engine has developed and improved in its efficiency, that obviously is going to have great impact on agricultural production, as these machines are doing a lot of the work that humans or animals used to do. Again, which allows us to grow more food, produce more on less land, and then clearly feed more people. Now, one of the things that's important to remember about grain production, and why wheat really is central to civilization and agriculture, those types of things, along with corn, is that wheat and corn are much easier to store, much easier to preserve over time, and also can be used in a variety of different ways, whether it's ground and used for a meal of some kind, or whether you eat it whole. I know some people might actually like roast wheat or something like that and eat it. That's not something we normally do, but corn obviously can be eaten whole on the kernel. It can be used to feed cattle. It does a variety of different things, and so because it's so versatile, because it can be stored so easily, it's really, these two crops, wheat and corn, have really revolutionized the way that we consume food in our world, and also revolutionized the way that we take care of populations. So that's all that we're going to have time for today. When we come back next time, we'll move on to a new topic, talking about the different elements that are going to impact farm locations. So talking about rural land use. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please leave any comments in the comment box below, and I hope to see you next time.